Welcome back, Romford Film Festival, day 4, our final day.
Amazing.
Would you introduce yourselves and your roles in your productions?
I'm Deborah Hadfield. I'm the writer, producer and director of Chinese Whispers.
And I'm Mundy, and I'm the director of photography on Chinese Whispers.
Okay, first of all, welcome and congratulations. That was an
Thank you
amazing
very much.
film. How are we feeling now that we've finally seen it on the big screen?
I really enjoyed seeing it. It was like a trip down memory lane, and you forget so much about it. And it was just fabulous to see it in all its glory on the big screen and hear the sound too.
Yeah, so it was a. How many years ago did we shoot it? It wasn't the beginning of
last
last
year.
year. Was it
It
last
was the
year?
beginning of last year.
It seems a lot
Yeah.
longer ago.
Yeah.
So it does seem like a lot longer, and it's obviously it was shot over the course of. Total film production was over 6 months, I suppose, from the summer elements you shot, and then all the way through to the January.
Yeah.
So it was a long period of time, but yeah, there was a lot to unpick in that. It was lovely to see it.
Yeah, so a little bit more about that. Where did this idea start, and what was the process like getting it all the way through production?
So this started as a conversation in May 2024 at the Cannes Film Festival.
Okay.
And I was there with some actor friends seeing our film The Chocolate Club, which we screened here last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it all came from a heady conversation of, ooh, let's make another film, and let's make another film this year. And I did an experimental film more years ago than I care to remember, a short film called Chinese Whispers, about a group of friends who come together for a Chinese meal and then share a series of secrets. So that conversation began then, and I got back from the festival and wrote the script and started working on it immediately.
And how long did it take you? How did the script and the production change over that amount of time?
So I'm a big fan of letting the actors develop their characters. So I came back from Cannes in May. I had early June, I'd got a first draft. I held a series of workshops and read-throughs. So then by the end of July we had I can never say a locked script because stuff changed as we went along. If we had a location, if we had an actor, if we had an idea, it would keep being developed until the end of filming. So each time we got an opportunity, whether it was like the location of the cave, for example, or the house. Originally the house was going to be a stately home, and then suddenly we changed location and we got that amazing modern house, so we then amended the script. And so it was very fluid all the way through to the end of post-production.
So you mentioned sort of letting the actors improvise. So was sort of I'm assuming casting was incredibly important, and did it come to be that the actors that we saw on screen were they always the right pick, or was it quite a long process?
So sometimes it was from the very beginning, like Rose, for example. I had not worked with her before. I was friends with her agent, so I developed that role for another person, but then that person couldn't make it. So then Rose stepped in, and then I developed the role with and for Rose as we went along. Equally, people like Jonathan Bramner, who played Jay, he was someone I'd worked with many years ago. And so I wanted to, originally the character was from somebody else, but then suddenly I got a chance to work with Jay, cast him as Jay. So it was a very fluid case of developing characters for actors I wanted to work with. And then sometimes that didn't work out, but it worked out better. So I'd not worked with Howard before, who played Harry, but when I was making sort of the script and developing the ideas, I mentioned it to him, and he admitted to me afterwards that he was going, oh, I like the sound of that, can I be involved? And then I happened to say to him, would you be interested? Oh yes, he said. And I developed that character.
Jumped straight at the chance.
Yeah, it was great.
And question for you. So the scale of a lot of those, the gorgeous locations and the beautiful drone shots and stuff, was that always sort of the idea, or was that something that kind of developed over time?
I think that credits to Deborah, really.
Okay.
I could say that I just rocked up with a camera, really, is kind of the basis of truth. Obviously, a lot of the locations, I'd say Deborah and I share a lot of sensibilities in terms of scale, colour palette, size, and the locations. We're big location filmers. So going to these locations, obviously, Deborah's home turf, so Deborah knows a lot of these locations. Obviously, when we scouted one of the locations, the house was an old house. It was a sort of very much a Gothic manor. It was very much, and that was beautiful aesthetics, and I was totally on board with that. And then Deborah goes, no, we're not doing that house anymore, we're doing this house. It couldn't be more different. There couldn't be more glass in that house. The reflections, the light, everything is LEDs, which is for a
We only secured that
great
house 2 weeks before we started shooting it.
So everything goes out the window, but then that's very much how we shoot in terms of you have to roll, like the cast is changing, you roll with the punches. You sort of, right, we don't have that now, we have this, how can we maximise that to make it the best it can be? And as you said, it turns out almost 100% to be better than the plans you had before, so hopefully that's on screen.
I think fluidity and a willingness of the crew and the cast to go with opportunities that came away. So the stately home was gorgeous, but there were a lot of practical issues with that, which was it was going to be freezing, there was no practical heating, and then I spent my whole Christmas sort of period going, I need a better location, I need something that's not going to give everybody pneumonia, I need something that, and then serendipity and friends who were sort of opening their contacts book for us allowed us to get that house in Guy Phoenix. Even the house led to other opportunities. For example, Guy Phoenix plays the owner of the house who turns up and is like, you know, you better not have touched my Lamborghini. And because he was allowing us to film at his house, I said, do you want to be in it? And I'd already got the idea of somebody that would come back. That was always part of the storyline. But then suddenly we were able to develop it a bit further and have it be, we gave him an opportunity. And he really blew our mind because he was really great, wasn't he? And at first I was thinking, oh, well, you don't know how these things are going to go. But he nailed it. And he was, it was a lot of fun.
Did you get to drive the Lamborghini?
No. In fact, nobody did. The owner of the Lamborghini, beauty of magic of cinema, he actually agreed to let us film with him. He put it on a low loader and took it to Derbyshire. And we didn't plan this, but it was snowing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we weren't sure we were going to get there. In fact, on the way that morning, we went up to film at a location. We were going to try and do sunrise, weren't we? Somewhere in Derbyshire. And the car we were in with all the crew, it was sliding backwards.
Oh.
And we had to abandon that. And then we had to drive across the Peak District to that location. We had no idea if we were going to film that day. In fact, the road we would film on was officially closed. So it was near Snake Pass. So we got there, the owner was putting the car on a low loader and meeting us up there. So we didn't know if we could film that location, we were told it was closed. And it was the biggest blessing ever because everybody else thought that road was closed. So we got there and we went to scout it and we went, no, this is fine. And the Lamborghini turned up like Batman arrived on set. And we got him to put an overcoat on and some gloves so we could film him. And then on location for the big house, we got Jonathan, sat in the car, and thanks to Jack and his amazing team, we actually used some very sort of DIY green screen to put him as if he was driving it.
So apparently the thing with these sort of prestige cars is you can't add miles to them. There's sort of any extra mile. So the reason it was on the low loader to get it to location was that they couldn't add any miles to it. So he was very happy to drive it round the block a few times. But what you don't sort of really I don't think you really appreciate at the time is that those locations, the snow, they look gorgeous on camera, but every sort of snow-filled valley or mountaintop view is just filled with logistical problems in terms of getting crew there. The amount of times I said to Deborah, we have to get a crew up there. It's not just a case of just you and me rocking up there with a camera. We have to get a whole team of people up there. Oh, it's fine, it's fine.
We'll figure it out.
And then the snow comes, and then it's like, Deborah, now it's snow. It'll be fine, we'll just get them
It'll look great.
They were troopers, though, weren't they, really?
Our team were amazing.
They did.
And actually, some of those snowy shots, it was only about 4 of us. It was you, Jack, Tom, and that was it for crew.
Yeah, we had a drone sort of satellite team that went out and did some drone stuff, and then we had sort of different teams that sort of did different elements. Yeah. We had a car team, but yeah, it was logistics and doing bits. Sort of, it's amazing how it's all come together and sort of looks like a cohesive picture. And
we had a main principal photography stint, but then we had days like Derbyshire. We had the day where we went to the cave, for example, and even the beach stuff. That was myself and one drone guy, and that was it. So I ended up being in that scene because I was going there thinking that the actor's wife and daughter were going to play his wife and daughter. And then when we got there, he said, "Oh no, wife's working and daughter won't do it." And I was like, we had one sunny day in Devon, and the logistics were it's a 6 hours drive to the beach that was behind his house. So we knew, well, we thought we'd probably never get back there. So we're just going to have to do something. He said, "Oh, well, you've got the same hair as my daughter." I said, "Then that, I'll just play your wife then, that's not." And so it was me, a drone pilot, and the actor.
So, the production was full of those little moments of the immediate ingenuity. And so obviously you mentioned that some of the best moments came out of that. What were some of the sort of the standout moments and the things that you remember from the production?
I think one of the things was, and Jack's already touched on it, was that the entire crew was so willing to take a risk, lean into opportunities. For example, some of those beautiful sea shots, that was one drone pilot in Cornwall being willing to just go out there and get them for us. And then, Jack and his team, they were working so closely together because it was a skeleton crew. And lighting that house, for example, was no mean feat.
Yeah.
And we were filming there for 5 days solid. And there was a lot of work each day. We knew we were covering anything up to 8, sometimes 9 pages a day, weren't we?
So it's also the number of cast you've got there. There's
Yeah.
sort of every setup you've got, and sometimes it's sort of 6, maybe 6 people. That's coverage for each person, running 2 cameras, which means 2 camera crews, plus all of the lighting. But they said it was the reflections, because obviously every time you put a camera crew there, that's taking up a large portion of the house.
And also, because it was all glass windows, floor to ceiling, virtually in every room, when we did those dark shots, there's a funny story here, we had to black out all of those windows, which we did with a tin foil and a mark bucket.
Classic cinematography, it's tin foil. There's a lot of tin foil,
And
but
then
there's a lot of windows.
How many rolls of tinfoil do you think?
Rolls,
we
at
lost
least,
count. We
yeah,
kept ordering it from Amazon, it just kept turning up.
bundles of.
But the really funny thing was, the house, which was such a gift, it was all wired so that you could turn all the lights on and off at the front door, because it was a show home. But then that also meant we couldn't turn the lights off on each individual room. So when we wanted to do that...
See, rich people don't care about power costs. They just turn the whole house on. It lit up like Christmas. But then if you wanted to turn something off individually, in an old house you could just undo a bulb or turn off a switch. It's all sort of...
So
it's all
when we
one.
did that scene, it was incredible because Jack had to light the entire scene because we had to turn off all the lights in the house and just pre-light that room.
The lounge room is all our lights. Considering there are so many lights in that room that were obviously built into, we didn't use any of them. They're all our lights that we had to then sort of have.
And this is another logistical irony. So when I first got the house, the first thing I said to the caterer is, "Great news, you've got an entire modern, beautiful kitchen to work in." Then the developer said, "By the way," I said, "Oh, can we use the fridge and can we use the cookers?" And I had like a bang. He said, "You can't use anything." So then I said to the caterer, "So you can't use the kitchen. However, there's a utility room." And then he had to bring a plug-in wok. And then when we were filming, he was preparing all the food freshly. And we were in the dining room one day, weren't we? And I went, "Who's chopping?" So we had to say, "You can't chop." And on the last day, on the Friday, when we were doing the living room scene, he was cooking in the dark with a torch.
God,
And it was that sort of mad logistical thing.
Considering you're surrounded by millions of pounds worth of house and then having to do things in the dark and having to bring your own kettle and things like that is a bit crazy, and having to bring your own lights and stuff. But that's filmmaking, and often sometimes it's best to bring our own elements in where we have control rather than relying on elements in the house. So,
and then the cast upstairs, they had these huge master suites where they could rehearse and change, and it was fantastic. Then on the last day when we filmed at the church and the school, they had a schoolroom where we all were, and you couldn't get one more different, could you?
Yeah, completely.
And everybody went with it. Nobody complained. Everybody was quite happy to just go with the flow, weren't they? We had an amazing team. Very lucky.
I'm sure that dedication was absolutely vital. And I wanted another question, very quickly, about the location. So you mentioned Derbyshire. So was that? I know you mentioned it was on your doorstep. So was that always the location, right in the script? She was like, I know exactly where we're going to
Yeah.
go for this.
I had no idea how we were going to do it because that cave is a good 20-minute walk away from the road. So we went up there, didn't we, at dawn, pre-dawn, and we all met nearby, and then we sort of jumped into cars and we went as close as we could. But that then meant the whole crew and cast were walking 20 minutes over fields with loads of kit and climbing into a cave and taking a drone. And
Who was carrying the kit, Deborah?
I think it's fair to say that I didn't carry the
Deborah
kit.
was leading the way, leading the charge,
Leading
we'll,
the
we'll call it.
Navigator.
Yes.
It was
Navigating.
very icy as well, so we were just looking
Pointing at things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go up there. It worked though, didn't it?
At the
Yeah.
top of that hill. Off we go, Jack. I'll wait down here.
And then when we
Get a
finished the cave, we then had to climb up the hill to get onto the top for that final shot. So when he walks up that incline and finishes up on the top of the cave, that was our final shot of the film,
I
wasn't it?
think anybody that works in the camera department, specifically in cinematography, we don't mind doing it to get the shot.
Yeah.
We'll do anything for the shot.
We did.
I think definitely you with your actors and sort of spend their time in the rehearsal period and stuff, and giving us the opportunities for those locations was amazing. But the camera team don't mind because if we see it on screen at the end of the day, that's payoff, and that's what we do it for.
What lessons sort of from this sort of, first of all, it paid dividends, everything that you did looked amazing, and I feel like it was 100% worth it.
Which team?
Maybe you didn't feel like it at the time, I'm sure, trying to climb up a mountain in the snow. But what sort of lessons have you learned, and what are the sort of things that you've taken away from this production, and what sort of, if you remembered, going forward? Maybe not to climb up mountains in the snow.
I think two things for me, always. Firstly, it reinforces this idea, especially as indie filmmakers with no budget, or hardly any budget, that if you can be flexible and fluid and not be too rigid, then the universe will bless you with opportunities that you can't imagine, like the snow in Derbyshire, for example. And if you push yourself and go the extra mile, then magic will happen that you couldn't have ever predicted. But the other, probably most important thing, is that filmmaking is very much like a family affair, and it's all very much a case of, takes an army to make a film, and if you surround yourself with the right people, anything becomes possible, and that was very much reinforced all the way along, I think, from day one all the way to the very end.
Sure.
I'd say I came on board to the film quite late, which isn't beyond what's happened in the past. That sometimes just the way things roll, and you have to sort of adapt. And I think this film proved more than any other film how I should just go with my gut. And so, because I didn't have a lot of time, and even when we had time to prep and go to see locations, they then went out the window. So having to just go with my gut and just go, I definitely think we should shoot it like this. And Deborah just giving me the flexibility to go, okay, we'll do that. There was a whole scene there where we got two characters talking, and when Rose gets the money, and can we just do it on one shot? I think it was the only scene we did with just one shot.
We did, it was,
So
yeah.
just literally doing a tracking shot back, and that's the whole scene. And we didn't have a lot of time, and I said, just let's do it one scene, and say, if you like it,
Yeah.
we'll then push in for close-ups if necessary, didn't need them. So I think just it shows on the screen, I think, where my guts is.
Yeah. And I think, again, sometimes necessity is the mother of invention, and that particularly that scene, which I adore, was a great example of that. We were running out of time. We knew I'd always put the scene there because of the painting that was there. But then Jack's suggestion of doing it as a one shot, I think, made it feel more intimate, and I think it made it stand out. So that worked beautifully well. And again,
I think the actors liked it as well. The fact that they knew that what we were going to shoot then is one take, or is one shot.
Yeah.
So their performance was going to be unedited, which was nice for them.
Yeah, it was, again, the actors trusted us, and it was, in that dining room scene, for example, we were shooting 2 cameras all the time, and we had masses of coverage for those couple of days we were in there, and it was almost like doing theatre, the way they had to do it. And we were doing probably half a dozen scenes back to back, so instead of doing a scene from different angles, we did all those 6 scenes from one angle, then went on to do it again from a different angle. So they were doing 6 scenes back to back from different
And then having to reset. So that was
complicated.
Yeah, it was complicated. And because I don't think we'd choose to do that same again.
But it was a time thing.
But we had to. Yeah, we just couldn't do the setups over and over again.
If we'd have done the scenes individually, we'd have taken 3 days, not 2, really, wouldn't it? and they were great. They just went with it.
And I think, again, that amount of dedication, I think, has really paid dividends. And so you mentioned not wanting to, would you work in this sort of similar way again, sort of, or is
Deborah does all the time, don't you, Deborah? Is it your way of working?
signature style?
I think that it's like every situation, it's a package deal. Yes, having more time is always good. Yes, having more prep is always good. However, if you're going to be an indie filmmaker, and my background is news and documentary, if you're going to be an indie filmmaker with limited budget, limited time, limited resources generally, you have to be flexible and fluid, and you have to say the only way something like that gets done is if you're willing to take some risks, take some chances, and trust with the right team, with the right actors, with the right crew, anything is possible. And then the more you push yourself, the more craziness happens, but then the more magic happens.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I direct, and I also do director photography, and I think over the last year I've done probably 2 of each. So it's just been quite interesting to learn the lessons and the motivations from that, which was a really good way of starting last year, and then sort of bring on board things that we learned into cinematography roles that I did that year, but also then taking a little bit of Deborah into my directing roles as well, sort of having a little Deborah in the back of my head going, well, Deborah would probably just be like, well, just keep rolling the cameras and see what happens at the end of the scene. That's a classic Deborah move, just to see what they do. And sometimes she'll leave the cameras in awkwardly long times, but she'll get a lovely little moment that they're just continuing to be in the moment. It's lovely. So I have done that on my, so I've sort of taken a little, so maybe hopefully Deborah takes a little bit of what I do into her future films as well, which is quite nice. It's always that continuation.
The reason I loved, I always warn the actors, and until it happens to them, they're not prepared for it. And even then, I love to leave the camera rolling at the end of the scene. Once I've got all the dialogue, I'll encourage my actors to stay in character and go with the moment with whatever's the character might do. And then sometimes, a partly time thing, but partly it's interesting from a performance point of view, I might direct them while the camera's running, and I'll say, right, on my cue, I want you to either redo a line or I want you to create a scenario. And what I find is their attention, their focus, their adrenaline is so on point in that moment that it's easier and more creative than stopping and resetting and, you know, having the luxury of saying, right, we're going to do that again and I'm going to give you 5 minutes of guidance. 99% of the time, in those moments, they're so sharp, and these, like you said, you get a moment or you get a look or you get a word or you get a phrase that you may not have got if you'd have just reset and redid it.
For sure, I think that's actually an amazing, sort of brilliant idea. Directors and they would should write that down. I think we might want to open it up to a few questions if anyone.
I have a question. For Jack, what equipment do you use and what are the advantages of that? Because I know lots of DOPs like to use different brands and things like that. So just that, and then for Deborah afterwards, what's the journey of the film from this point? Are you at the end of the festival run or the beginning, or what's the journey?
So on this we shot on a lot of Canon stuff, and I have to say that the number of times I've shot on Canon bodies and their lovely new prime lenses is one. I've never shot on Canon before, ever. I've always been a Nikon photographer, then we've shot on Blackmagics and Arris, and never wanted to or needed to, but we again gifted the opportunity to be, but with the lovely Canon people, to give us a load of provide us with some fantastic Canon bodies, and they're really nice. I can't remember what the name of them is. I know they've got a lovely red ring on their beautiful cinematography cine lenses, and the crew had never worked with them either. So this is unusual for a cinematographer to sort of be given. These are the cameras you're going to be shooting with. Get on with it. And it was lovely. They were. I mean, we obviously brought our own style. I mean, the way we light stuff is probably very consistent with how we've done that in previous shots and previous shoots. But shooting on that, I was really pleased. Obviously, the colour grading. I hadn't seen the colour grading on the big screen before, and that's always something that we don't necessarily always get the luxury of being involved in, and I wasn't in this case. But it was lovely to see how those colours and the warmth came out. Having the black Pro-Mist filters in there, sort of, it really did sort of work. We didn't use them outside, we just used those inside, so that sort of had that warmth, that sort of nostalgia feel for the stuff inside the house, because they were always talking about their memories. So having those type of sensibilities was nice, but the actual physical equipment was Canon, and I had never shot them before. Nice though, nice.
On the 7th of June, this film was up for 5 awards at Crown Point International.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Which is in the Logan Theatre in Chicago, and I'm going along to that. That will be our last festival, so this is our penultimate festival.
Okay.
We are currently at 173 awards on the festival circuit.
Oh my God.
And we've just done a deal with a sales agent and distributor, so this film will be coming out in October.
Well, again, congratulations. That's
Thank you very
amazing.
much. And it's got a series of small screenings at indie cinemas as well. So in a way, the lovely thing about, I was here last year with Chocolate Club, and we've just
I was here last year as well. I was here
You
last
were?
year.
Being left out.
You were.
Yeah.
I didn't. That might have been the first time we met, actually.
It was.
Yeah.
No, it was one of we had met before, but this was we wanted to come back here specifically because we said it was really
Yeah,
nice.
it's
That
like a
literally
nice-
12 months ago
yeah.
we were here. I think we had shot then, hadn't we? We must have filmed the film.
No, I haven't. No, I think we have. You know what? It's a blur,
It is a
Yeah.
blur.
So
it is
we
a blur.
both
Yeah.
also made our own features since then.
Okay.
So we just took Connected, which was my third feature in 3 years, to Cannes.
That's, again, incredibly impressive.
And we started to shoot the next one in October. So yeah, we won't probably finish this time last year, won't we? Yeah. But the new movie hadn't. That's why I'm getting confused.
That's right.
So yeah, so the
So many
journey
movies,
is-
so little time.
Exactly. The journey of this film now is to get out there to the public, to be on sale, to, we put it on the festival circuit for just over a year, and it's done incredibly well. It's a, great sort of warm film, been very honoured. And I just feel incredibly proud of everybody, every single person contributed to making this happen. Because it was a mad idea, and there was no way it should have ever been made. But thanks to people like Jack who jumped in and...
So do you think next year we'll have a film each up against each other? Because I've directed a film that we shot literally October. You shot your latest film beginning of this year.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll both enter them next year and find out.
I think we should just come back here every year.
We'll just come back.
with whatever we've made.
Absolutely.
So
No.
we're making 2 films in October.
It'll be
We
our
might be
regular
making a
thing.
third this year. So
Okay.
we should. I mean, I love this theatre, and I love the people that organise this.
It is
festival.
amazing, isn't it?
And actually, to be in a cinema of this quality, seeing your work, is incredible. Because I've seen that film in all sorts of situations, from like projector screens in barns to, screening at Cannes, at the Marché.
Take a lot of pride in sort of showing the films, which I think is really important to
Yeah,
filmmakers.
because
The amount of times we've seen it on small screens or bad audio, all these type of things, and it's just soul destroying for every department. If the sound, especially if the sound is not good, there's the amount of hours that have gone into it with the sound people that sort of.
For me, the joy was sitting there, with my feet up, and relaxing and watching it without any pressure, and actually enjoying every single second of everything, from the music, the sound design, to the performances, to the colours and the shots. It was an absolute joy, and it's such an honour to be in such a great quality cinema. So thank you to the festival, but also all the staff that makes it possible.
Sure.
Because to filmmakers like us, this is the reward really of seeing it in that full glory. It's the absolute reward of being able to have these opportunities. So thank you.
And I think, obviously, I've said it before, but it was amazing, and I think we should give them one more round of applause before we go. I think that's what we've got time for. Thank you.